have them. All the latest LED technology, digital animations. It's a lot of fun. Magical lights, you're in your car. You're crawling through the sparkling path of Northeast Ohio's favorite holiday tradition. One carload, one price. You can go to magicoflights.com for all the details on tickets, or just win a carload here. Good luck. Caller 10 get you through the magic of lights. 216-578-1007 or 800-348-1007.
Fun fact, celebrity deaths, like testicles, sometimes come in threes. The Alan Cox Show
on 100.7
WMMS.
That's no joke. We had a handful of celebrities die while we were gone. Had, Gallagher died.
Yeah.
Bud Friedman died.
Oh, I didn't hear about Bud.
Kevin Conroy died.
That one was a big one for me. I've been watching a lot of Batman the animated series since I heard about that.
I will have another $1,000 for you to win here in about 8 minutes. 3:30 is going to be the next keyword for you to go fund yourself. And about 30 past every hour, all day long, you get one of these keywords. So I hope that you pay attention. I hope that you win here in a few. Where to start? Gallagher died. I think his brother is still alive. Gallagher too. But Gallagher, I guess, had been sick for a while. Or
does he have a daughter? Because
Gallagher have a daughter? I don't know.
Maybe if Gallagher has a daughter, she can carry on the tradition. Be Gallagher.
Bill Squire's Christmas Kwanzaa is coming soon to the world-famous Agora.
December 16th. Get tickets at agoracleveland.com. Me, Mary, Polk.
Me, Mary? What are you, Irish?
Me,
Mary.
Me, Mary.
Me, Mary.
Me, Mary, be telling jokes.
Mike Polk Jr. Jasmine Carter. I don't want to be on stage for you. Why are you doing it in December, me lad? Me, Mary told me to do it. Hey. Gallagher, this poor guy, I referred to him on Twitter as a fruit serial killer, but, he did other stuff. He did become known for smashing watermelons, but he'd been in bad health for a while. He was 76. He just died of multiple organ failure. He had a bunch of heart attacks. He was in a coma years ago, a medically induced coma, but his body just gave out. I think the older he got, kind of... the more his non-fruit-centric humor kind of moved to the right. But he's a 76-year-old guy. Back in the day, it was a big deal when there was a new Gallagher special.
I remember.
There are people that are associated with the early days of HBO comedy specials. George Carlin, most famously, Robert Klein, and Gallagher. Gallagher did stuff on Showtime as well, back when nobody really knew what Showtime was. They did a show called An Uncensored Evening, and it was the first stand-up comedy special that Showtime aired. It's like 40-plus years ago, and that's what kind of blew him up. The Sledge-O-Matic was what most people knew him from. So you go to a Gallagher show, the joke was that if you were in the first couple of rows, everybody was wearing a poncho. Because you knew.
Yeah, the tarps, and you hold the tarps up when you...
when you smash it.
Imagine convincing venues that that's your gig. That's your bit.
I promise, it's going to kill. I swear.
When I break out the comically oversized wooden sledgehammer and start smashing watermelons, but you had to start that in clubs. Mm-hmm. You didn't just jump to arenas. You had to convince clubs to let you do it.
In 2 clubs, and then all of a sudden people are like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
We got to get this to the theaters.
He hadn't been performing for a few years. 2019, he did a farewell tour called The Last Smash. And he famously got into a lot of legal trouble with his brother because his brother, who looked exactly like him, would go out as Gallagher 2. Sometimes TOO, sometimes TWO. And they got into legal Imagine... You have so much of not an act that you go, I'm just going to go out and do my brother's act. And I'm not going to tell people because it was the point of the whole litigation, it was very unclear who you were seeing. Because Leo Gallagher OG Gallagher, and then his brother Ron. And there were people who were understandably upset because it wasn't clear which Gallagher they were getting. And so the OG Gallagher took his brother to court because his brother's doing all of it. He's doing the Sledge-O-Matic. He's doing imagine that. I mean, at least Tony Rock has his own material.
Yeah, Tony Rock's a very good writer and performer, and he's got his own voice. The Sklar brothers are very similar.
Gallagher are twins, and they perform together. Who are the other twins that perform together?
Sklar brothers?
No, the black dudes, the young guys.
Lucas brothers.
Lucas brothers.
Brothers, but then there's the buff black dudes.
Hodge twins.
Yeah.
I'm not down
They're
with the twin.
Yeah.
I'm not down with the twin comedy vibe. It's just not my thing.
Yeah. It can be done well.
No, the Sklar
but
brothers
you've
and
gotta,
Lucas brothers
like-
do it well, but it's like it's just not my.
It's different.
Yeah, it's not my. So
I'm watching a Gallagher clip, and early on, not everybody was bringing ponchos or bringing plastic. It's kind of like there's a lot of people that are not ready for it, and they're just getting splattered.
Well, he got sued by a woman years ago. I couldn't believe it didn't happen more often, but he got sued by a woman who said she got hurt at one of his shows. So the guy was always in court for something.
I met him once. He was hanging out around Hilarities. Wasn't performing, just hanging out.
Yeah.
And I took a picture with him, and he smelled terrible.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. Well, he got huge from Johnny Carson. And then back in the day, comedians were not selling out theaters. They were still very much relegated to comedy clubs. And Gallagher, probably by dint of the fact that this was his act, starts to sell out theaters on like a regular basis. And he does all the Showtime specials, and it was a big, big deal.
I don't think I've ever seen his stand-up.
I remember watching it a lot as a kid and loving it, but I was also a small child.
Well, and it was very pun-heavy, and, you know, never turn your back on a man named Sodom. That was his, early 90s Desert Storm humor.
The handiest and the dandiest kitchen tool you've ever seen, and don't you want to know how it works? Yeah! Well, first you get out an ordinary apple. Then you place the apple easily between the patented pan. Then what do you do, gang? It's simple. You reach for the tool that is not a slicer, it's not a dicer, it's not a chopper and a hopper. What could it possibly be? It is Sledge-O-Matic. Hey! Nice and bad, quick.
So, he's the apple and the watermelon and the whole thing. But people ate it up, boy. Literally,
Right.
there was a lot of food in the audience.
so-
after.
All you boomers, stop getting mad at YouTubers.
Right?
Yeah. This guy was smashing fruit, and his brother was ripping off the act.
And selling out, and people were you would see the people losing their minds.
Losing
over
their
it.
minds.
They can't handle. They're like, I didn't think it was going to get smashed.
Or because the medically induced coma is to keep your brain from swelling, you see. That's what they told me.
What had happened?
I went into the back room of a club, as you do, and I sat down, and that's the last thing I remember.
A heart issue? A brain issue?
Oh, it was a heart attack. Oh, well, it's all plumbing. It just clogs up.
Mm-hmm.
It's all plumbing. It just clogs up. There's Gallagher talking to Letterman some years ago when he was already having a lot of heart problems. So if Ron Gallagher is still going out there, and I would imagine that this is nothing a tragedy. I'm sure he's mourning his brother's death, but this is nothing but a boon for Ron Gallagher's career.
Only one left.
Because
Last Gallagher sledging.
The Gallagher population has just been cut in half. There's 50% less Gallagher out there. And if you're any good at math, you realize that means that Ron Gallagher is going to give you 110% when he's out there touring. Now, he could already be dead. I don't know anything about Ron Gallagher. But I know, imagine you went to that show and thought, he looks a lot like the guy. Because even if you Google Ron Gallagher, it's all stories about his brother.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to do the mustache. You have to do the skullet. You got to grow your hair out the same way. you're doing your brother's act. And he'd always go, I'm the real Gallagher. My name's Gallagher. I got a big wooden hammer.
It's not a hammer. It's a sledge-o-matic.
Sledge-o-matic.
Show some respect.
Yeah,
Sorry.
duh.
So Leo Gallagher, the OG, is dead. Bud Friedman died. Bud Friedman was basically the guy who invented the modern comedy club. Comedy clubs were not a thing.
There were nightclubs and comedians would go perform at them.
Yes.
But it would be part of an overall show. There'd be musicians and a comedian would come out.
Right.
And then you'd have a singer, stuff like that. But it was all one big show, and you'd get a comic on stage for maybe 10 minutes.
Well, in the comics, by the way, Bud Friedman was pretty smart because the key to his success, he's the guy that opened the original Improv in New York. And so he predated all of the other clubs that you know and have been around forever. Comedy Store didn't even come around until a few years after that. Comedy Cellar, years after that. Catch a Rising Star, a few years after. So the original Improv, early 60s. And that's when, like Bill's talking about those kind of variety shows, comedians all were so similar that you couldn't have a full show you couldn't have a showcase of just comedians because they're all doing somebody else's jokes. They all got the tuxedo. Those old school guys.
You had certain guys that were big names and would tour. I mean, Cosby, you had Bob Newhart, but they were still anomalies. Like there was just a few that could go out and do their own thing.
I mean, you had some of those old school guys, you'd have them doing the same 10 minutes for 30 years, like other people writing their jokes. And so there got to be, I think Bud Friedman was smart because he's like, here's a bunch of people. There was no comedy club scene in the early 60s. And he's like, here's a bunch of guys that are different enough where you can put them up and you can have, so like Jay Leno and Seinfeld very famously, Mitzi Shore didn't like him. So Seinfeld couldn't get up at the Comedy Store. So he's doing the Improv and Catch a Rising Star and all those. And Robert Klein and Andy Kaufman and Richard Pryor. So without Bud Friedman, those people wouldn't have careers. Bud Friedman also used a monocle. I don't know why. He looked like Mr. Peanut when you saw him. But he was 90. He had a long life. He died of a heart attack. So for people old enough to remember, The Tonight Show was originally in New York. Johnny Carson used to do the show in Manhattan and moved out to L.A. In the early 70s. And Bud Friedman followed him out there and opened the Improv.
And that one's still open.
Still open. I think he sold the company a few years ago. There were a couple of dozen Improvs as of a few years ago. There's still one in Pittsburgh. There was one here in Cleveland when I first came here, but is it still there?
It's still there.
Or is it just moved locations?
No, it's always been there.
Well,
right?
It was at the Powerhouse when I moved here.
It was at the Powerhouse. That was the original location. That was my home club when I started. So I'd work there regularly. Was a doorman there when I was very new, and then started working as a host. And
so there's still a Cleveland Improv.
There's a Cleveland Improv. It's over there by Music Box and Shooters.
There you
and
go.
Everything
Right,
like that.
exactly, right. And so there's still a couple dozen of them. But 44th and 9th is where it started off in New York. And again, a lot of people got launched because Bud Friedman liked him. Barry Manilow was like the house piano player, and Danny Aiello, the late actor, was a bouncer. Piscopo was there. Rodney Dangerfield was an MC. So been there for a long, long time. But a lot of major comics got their careers started because of Bud Friedman. Jay Leno, who we were just talking earlier in the show, has been in a very bad car fire.
What do you think that sounded like when he got caught? When he caught on fire?
Guys, my face is on fire.
It's so bad.
I know I look like a lantern, but I'm not supposed to be lit up like one. I mean, I wonder if he asked for you got a denim hospital gown? So, anyway, Jay Leno one of his cars in his garage or hangar, he has a massive famous car collection. One of them blew up or something and got his face, and so they're hoping he's going to be okay. But he's
And imagine if your hobby is what disfigures you, maybe ends up killing you. Like for me, it'd be like shoes fall on me and crush me.
Be texting and driving for me.
That's your hobby.
Yeah.
that is her hobby. Yes. Mary's going to be done in. Well, she died doing what she loved.
She was texting and
and
driving
driving.
and picking her nose and eating it, and
Being
then boom.
neglectful.
You know what?
By the way,
she was herself to the very end.
I lost a ton of followers, and I didn't notice it until I was in Nebraska, and I thought it was because I lost like 300 followers.
Because of the booger eating?
I thought it was because I was in Nebraska, and then I looked back at the day where they all started to drop off, and it was the day that you guys shared the booger eating clip.
Why would people unfollow somebody because of that?
150 followers that day.
You sure it wasn't a bot purge?
I don't think so.
Because that happens to me. They'll purge bots, and then you go,
that's
why
the
do
only
I?
thing I can connect is the day that was posted, I lost 150 followers, and then it's been a steady decline of about another 150 over the last week.
But think of all the people you can gain if you lean into booger-eating content.
Yeah, make
But
it
their
part of your
keyboards are so
subscription.
sticky, they can't comment or share my videos.
It's like these people who get canceled.
They'll find a way.
It's like these people who lose followers from normal level-headed people. They'll pick up 3 times as many in maniacs.
That's not what I need.
Who love. I know, but I'm just saying. I mean. So anyway, Jay Leno, I think of with Bud Friedman because whatever you think of Jay Leno comedically, the guy was a beast. He, by sheer force of will, was going to become a success. He was living in Boston, and he would drive into Manhattan every night to get on at the Improv, and he wasn't getting on. And he finally goes up to Bud Friedman and goes, hey, I go to Emerson College, and I come in every night. When can I get on? And he's like, you've been driving here and back every night? And he goes, yeah.
He does love cars.
But Bud Friedman was Leno's first manager. He goes, a dude that's working that hard, I'm going to take him on as a client. And then that's what blew up Leno. Because he's like, yeah, I'm driving back and forth to Boston every night to get on at the Improv in New York. So Bud Friedman died. Gallagher died. Kevin Conroy died. If you're a nerd, you will recognize him as the cartoon voice of Batman. Mask of the Phantasm is the one that I remember. Because, right, Mark Hamill was the Joker?
Yes.
There was Batman, the animated series.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if he did the video games. Did he do all the video games, too?
He did a lot of the video games.
Yeah.
He did a lot of, I think he did some of the, Batman Arkham Asylum games. I think he did,
so if you're
all those. But
if you're like a 90s kid,
Yeah.
he's your cartoon Batman. Kevin Conroy had cancer.
He was great.
He died at 66. There's a documentary, I think, a couple of years ago, or there's something on YouTube talking about how Kevin Conroy kind of blew up in the Batman thing. But yeah, Mark Hamill's famously the Joker in those, and Kevin Conroy was the cartoon voice of the Batman.
And I was watching an interview about them and how back then they would just record stuff because cartoons weren't taken very serious.
Mm-hmm.
So they're just like, record it. Let's just get it done. It's for kids. They don't care. And they had a much different approach. They had a full orchestra doing the score for each episode. They had the performers in the room with each other, which seems like a simple, right way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But they're like, oh, this makes it so much better.
Yeah.
If they're actually reacting to each other and not just doing cold reads of these scripts.
And there have been a lot of other cartoon Batmans. Peter Weller was cartoon Batman.
Batman Returns.
Diedrich Bader.
He's the current one for
Is he?
Harley Quinn. Yeah.
Okay. Ron Perlman was Batman in the cartoons. Adam Westwood, Billy Baldwin, a lot of guys. But Kevin Conroy, Will Arnett, he's Lego Batman, obviously. But Kevin Conroy is, he's the guy in those cartoons.
He's the guy. He's the top of the pile when you think of voice actor Batmans. I love those cartoons. I watched. I mentioned it earlier. I watched a bunch over the weekend, and they the art is so great, the music's great. They are pretty cheesy at times, but I kind of like Batman that way because that's the way it makes sense. Because when you try and make Batman into the Robert Pattinson or the Christian Bale Batman, you're just like, but why? Like, what are you doing?
Well,
You're a grown man.
It still has to be a
that.
cartoon.
Yeah. But they take it so serious. And in a cartoon or a comic book, you're like, there's this whole world to that. But when they try and place it into a real world setting, it just doesn't translate. They do a good job with those movies, but it's still just not the same.
I got so caught up in dead celebrities that I forgot to give away this money. So I'm going to give
no.
you this money, and then I'll go to a break, and we'll return. It's $1,000. It is a chance for you to go fund yourself. Good luck.
The Buzzard wants you to go fund yourself and score $1,000.